and is how do you determine the repair value? How do you do that? Like you looking at pictures, everybody knows that is watching this, right? Like even in a room that you and I are sitting in right now, we can eliminate the dirty pictures. As a matter of fact, our cameras might be turned to the nicer corners of the room, right? So you can go off of pictures. How do you and your team, or how do you determine the repair budget or the repairs that need to happen on the property?
Yeah, no, another super valuable question. I would say at first, I definitely was not good at this. I got burned on one of the first projects that I did because I didn't have experience in that. And, you know, first and foremost, I would say if you're brand new to this and you don't have a background in construction, when you find a good deal, reach out to somebody in your market like Eric or myself that has some experience and just say, you know, hey, would you mind looking over these photos with me real quick? Or would you have time to swing by this property with me and look it over and let me know what you think, if I'm on track with the rehab budget, or if you think I'm way off. That would have saved me so much headache had I done that. But honestly, I really didn't do well with it until after my first couple of projects. Once I started to realize, get a handle for how much different types of repairs cost. And there's books out there about estimating rehabs and stuff. That's all super valuable to get a good general idea if you're new to it. But it's all also market specific and honestly economy specific. We saw how much lumber prices and stuff went up during COVID. So that made the books that were written 2 years prior kind of obsolete. So, you know, honestly, it's one of those I would get more experienced assistance with, another set of eyes on it early on. And then as you do a few, you'll start to get a good grasp on it. Now, as far as funding those deals, that's honestly one of the easiest parts. And that's the part that most people that I speak with that want to get started get hung up at. They think that I don't have any money to get started. How am I going to do this? I need to save up money, blah, blah, blah. I was dumb enough to believe what I learned hearing, I think it was a Bigger Pockets episode, 5.5 or 6 years ago, where I learned what a hard money lender was. And I learned that if you find a good enough deal, usually 70% rule or better, some of them go up to 75%, then most of them will fund you the entire rehab budget and most, if not all, of the purchase price. I would say on average, most hard money lenders are going to want you to put down 10% of the purchase price. However, there are several out there, you just have to look for them, that will fund 100% of the purchase and rehab budget. Now, the caveat there is that sounds at first glance that you are just going to get all of the money and not need any other money for anything else. Well, it's not exactly true, because you're still going to need a little bit of money, between, 8 to 15 grand, depending on deal size, to pay your closing costs up front when you purchase the property to actually get it closed. And then all of that rehab money that this lender's giving you, they're not releasing all of that money to you up front. They're holding it back on a draw schedule. So you have to actually start the rehab, either get some money from somewhere to start the rehab before you request a draw from them for work that you've already completed, or maybe you've got a good relationship with a contractor that understands how draw schedules work and is willing to work with you and complete some of the work before you get the first draw. It depends, what your situation is, but over time, to get that little bit of money that you need for closing costs and to start the rehab, and also you've got holding costs. You'll have to make interest-only monthly payments to that lender. You'll have to pay your utilities. You'll have to pay for your insurance policy, probably before closing usually. So there are some other expenses, but, you can... a lot of, this isn't Dave Ramsey approved, but you can get a cash advance on a credit card. You can find what's called a gap lender somebody that's going to loan you 20 or 30 grand, maybe at a much higher rate of interest, maybe 18, 20% or something, to be in a second position on that property that will fund it. But as you do it, it gets easier. Just the same exact way that compound interest works, every other aspect of business works. So that comes to finding deals, that comes to wholesaler relationships, that comes to every other form of networking, that comes to lender connections. So even though I absolutely love helping people and volunteering my time to speak at events like this one coming up, even those things as well also provide a benefit to me, because the more exposure that I have and the more I network and meet people, the more credibility I get, and the more wholesalers reach out to me, and the more private money reaches out to me. And now I have private lenders that are just individuals that most of them only loan to me. They're not experienced in loaning, prior to working with me. And these private lenders, you can set whatever terms that they're willing to do. So a lot of them now, they fund me over 100% of purchase and rehab. They often will fund me 105 to 110%. So I have all of the money I need to close on the property and to hold the property. And on top of that, these private lenders give me all of my rehab money up front. They don't hold it back. So most of the time when I'm closing on a new property, I'm actually walking away with a check for 30 or 40 or 50 grand instead of having to wire money to the attorney. So the lending options get a lot more flexible, and you can get a lot more competitive rates in terms and flexibility. The more you do it, the more options you have, the longer, your track record, the better your track record gets over time. It all gets easier and less expensive, but initially it's a little bit harder, but it's all doable. It may be more expensive. To give you an example, your typical hard money is on average going to be somewhere around 2 to 3 points up front and about 12% annualized interest. Whereas most of the private lenders that I'm working with are at 0 points and 10% annualized interest, and maybe one or two of them that loan very large amounts to me. I think there might be a couple that are at 0 and 12, but I don't pay more than that. And so when you extrapolate that over, however many 30 or 40, 50 flips a year, however many it ends up being, and you're saving 5 to 8 grand in, points on every single deal, that adds a whole lot. I mean, 6 figures to your bottom line.
Yeah. Very, very important what Jason said. The whole information is of course fantastic, but make sure that you either have a line of credit or a credit card. And yes, this is not Dave Ramsey approved. That's why I don't know a single real estate investor that listens to Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is very good in what he does, but he says don't go into debt. Jason and Jason just said in the beginning of the call, he has apartment buildings, RV parks. So I only assume he has tons and tons of debt, good debt. But Dave Ramsey says don't go into debt, which is Jason and I don't agree with. But he says Jason says make sure you have deep pockets, because you have to come up front, right? Like you have to put down a due diligence money, and wholesaler wants to make sure that you're going to close on a deal. So often they're asking $3,000 to $5,000 up front before you even close. And then you need to do the insurance, closing costs. Jason is on par with all the costs. And that's why, similar to Jason, I always ask if a flipper comes, or if a contractor comes to me and says it's $70,000, I ask for $80,000, right? I ask for the $5,000 of closing costs. I am asking for the insurance, utilities that you have to pay throughout the holding period. Now, the one thing I'm jealous of, Jason gets super cheap money, because here in Raleigh we pay 12% at 2 points. So, Jason, I know I'm talking in Wilmington on the 2nd of January, so I might have to cast out a net and see if I can get some of your lenders. Hey.